Fridays in working class neighborhoods are different. The sound of vendors gets louder on this day in particular. The people on our street wake up to their voices instead of the roosters crowing. And since I live in a popular district, I'm definitely one of them. But I'm waiting for something. Uncle Arafat, whose voice is distinct as he calls out antiques and bric-a-brac. Only then do I get out of bed and head to the balcony. I find him parked with his old cart below our building. And as soon as he sees me, he gestures to me, so I understand that he's waiting for me to come down. Exactly as it happened on that day. I went down after he gestured to see what was new with him. And when I stood by his cart, he said to me, "Good morning, Engineer Ali." "Good morning to you, Uncle Arafat. What do you have today?" "I have everything. But I'm puzzled by you." I was surprised because he's been passing through our street for 5 years. And this was the first time he said that. So I asked him, "What's the matter?" "I just don't understand." "Meaning, a decor engineer like you who loves buying antiques and junk, what do you do with all this stuff?" I laughed at his words, and I said to him, "Seriously, my friend, I've been buying from you for 5 whole years and you're just asking now." "Well, you're just asking now." "It's funny you ask. But anyway, I'll answer your question briefly. I love collecting antiques, old stamps, rare coins, and anything you can think of that carries the scent of time. I've made a corner in my room like a museum where I keep everything I buy because I feel a sense of comfort standing in front of these old things. I feel like each one of them tells a memory." I finished my words, and before he could comment, I continued, "Besides, decor is linked to antiques. Every old thing sparks a new idea for me. So don't be surprised that I'm almost the only customer in the whole area who buys from you. When I finished, he laughed and said, "You really have a point there. If it weren't for different tastes, goods would go to waste." Antiques and bric-a-brac aren't really merchandise, Uncle Arafat, to go to waste. They are stories in the form of objects, old ones. Only those who know their worth will understand their value. Anyway, let's go, no need to waste more time. Show me what you have. This time, he didn't let me look through what was on the cart. He brought out a wooden box. It was old and light. He opened the belly of the cart. Underneath, opened the box. And he said to me, "Look here first and tell me your opinion." As soon as my eyes looked into the box, I caught sight of a blue velvet case that caught my attention because the fabric was worn. Not to mention that I felt curious about the case because it was closed. I took it, opened it, and found a prayer bead rosary inside. Its appearance grabbed my attention. I took it out of the case and placed it on my palm. Its black beads shone with a strange glow and reflected intense light despite the fact that where we were standing was in the shade. Even the spacers between the beads caught my eye because they were made of old silver engraved with unclear patterns. That's when I said to Uncle Arafat, "Where did you get this rosary?" "People who were tearing down their old house. Before they tore it down, they collected everything and sold it as scrap. And I bought from them the things that suited me. This prayer bead was among what I bought." After he told me the life story of the prayer beads, he asked me then, "Do you like these beads or what?" Honestly, I won't hide it from you. They don't look antique or anything, but the black color of the beads is a bit strange. As soon as the box opened and light hit them, they reflected a kind of gray light. Nay, even though we were standing in the shade. Uncle Arafat was puzzled by my words. He said to me, "What is this light the beads are reflecting, engineer?" "These are just beads, like burnt coal." "Burnt coal?" "Not at all. It seems like you're working, remaining antique by inheritance, and you don't understand the value of the thing in your hand. These prayer beads, despite the fact that they look very ordinary, the scent of the past emanates from them. Every bead holds a story, though I still can't understand how it reflects that light." He looked around where we were standing, and then he came back and said to me, "For myself, I don't know what light you're talking about. But what can I say? A monkey's a beauty in its mother's eyes. And my friend, you love antiques, and the beads are with an antique dealer, so you must wax poetic about them. Okay, how much is it?" "Whatever you say. And when have I ever haggled with you over the price of something you're buying?" I paid him £50, and I took them and left. I entered my room. I stood before the corner where I keep the antiques. I was looking for the most suitable place to put them. At that moment, I hung them in a corner like that, so that it takes the shape of an inverted triangle. And after that, I started looking into what I had to do. In the name of God and with God's blessing, let's start the episode. In the name of God. This episode is a new story and a new experience from the series of listeners' experiences and tales. Your very own tales. Let's start today's episode and say, in the name of God. I came out of my room, dusting off my hands and clothes. I found my mother had woken up and was looking at me. She said to me, "Happy Friday, Ali." "Good morning to you, my dear. To me and you, God willing. It seems you just came from Arafat, the scrap dealer. As long as you are dusting off your clothes like that in your hands, then you must have just come from him." I smiled at her words and told her, "Are you still calling it scrap, Mother? Now it's called antiques. Anyone hearing you would think I'm buying old aluminum or old plastic. It's just that I love collecting old things, Mother. And you know, it's been a hobby of mine since I was young. And currently reflecting on them helps me find new ideas for my work. Besides, don't try to distract me now. I'm starving. Where's your beautiful breakfast then?" "Immediately, my dear, and it will be ready." After my mother set the breakfast and we ate, I went into my room to finish some work I had, before Friday prayers. I sat at my desk and lifted the laptop screen to open it. But before I pressed the power button, I caught a reflected image on the screen. Even though the screen at the time was still dark. And because I'm not one of those people who pass by details without a second thought, I examined the image that appeared. I felt it was close to the silhouette of a person reflected on the screen. When I got up from my seat and looked behind me, I found nothing but the wall. I returned and looked at the screen again, finding it quite normal with nothing reflected on it. I interpreted what happened as the effect of the sun on my eyes when I went down to Uncle Arafat. At the same time, I was puzzled by this interpretation, because this time we stood in the shade, especially since I go down every Friday morning to see what's new with him, and afterwards I go up to have breakfast and work a little. And not once has something like this ever happened. I moved past what happened. I told myself maybe extra electrical signals in my eyes caused me to glimpse that child. I pressed the power button, opened my laptop, and chose a work file I was late in delivering to start working on it. And within minutes I caught a glimpse of the child on the screen again. But because the screen was lit this time, I was able to glimpse a strange mixture of colors. As an interior designer, I found that this mix of colors didn't suit each other. Every color was far in its specifications and philosophy. From me, this was because it was a mix of blue, green, yellow, and red. Even their combination together was random, and that in itself was something incomprehensible for me. I looked behind me again, but this time I found the color mix had disappeared from the laptop screen and reflected on the wall, as if the screen and wall were reflecting something with me in the room. And at the same time, my eyes couldn't see it. My heart is beating in my chest loudly, like a traditional drum, fear is pounding on it with all its might. And this was because the color mix moved off the wall and started walking around the room, as if the child was able to move through the air like sound waves, until it reached my museum, or the corner where I keep my antiques. I stood shocked as I saw the color mix taking shape, forming into a shape closer to a human, but without a face or features appearing. I was just standing in front of a ghost or shadow tinted with that mix. I approached it while swallowing hard and taking a deep breath, composed myself and controlled the shaking that gripped my legs and made me walk with unsteady steps until I stood before it. And I couldn't comprehend the colors embodied before my eyes. I stood there, my mind unable to think at that moment. My nose caught a very strange scent of incense, a scent mixed with the smell of earth damp from the rain. And because curiosity is one of my flaws, I decided to explore this thing. I reached out my hand and was surprised that my hand was passing through the colors to the other side, as if my eyes saw it, but it had no physical presence, stranger still. The colors themselves were cold, cold to the point that my hand turned blue from the intensity of the chill. And it felt as if it had spent a whole night inside a freezer. And my fingers themselves were frozen from the cold. My heart constricted even more, and I stepped back. That's when I heard a sound. Prayer beads hitting each other, making a sound. The hair on my head stood up from fear. But I passed over this last feeling when I discovered that I had touched the corner where I keep my antiques. Or maybe I hit it quite hard. I didn't notice it because of what was happening. It was natural for the prayer beads to shake. By the time I looked at the beads stopped moving suddenly. I looked back toward the colors that had taken the form of a shadow and found they had vanished and were no longer there. I spun around in circles like a madman. The room was empty, and everything was quiet. There was nothing reflected on the laptop screen or even on the wall. I stayed like that until I heard a knock on the room door. Then the door opened. I took a deep breath, not because I was relieved that everything happening to me had disappeared, On the contrary, I tried with all my might to extinguish the fire I felt for the first time. This was because I saw my mother in front of me saying, "Ali, the Friday call to prayer has already sounded. For the first time, you're late for the prayer hall. Or do you not intend to go down and pray?" I stood frozen as I listened to my mother's words. Literally, I hadn't felt the time pass, nor had I even heard the Friday call to prayer, even though the mosque is close to the house. But because she opened the door and found me standing in the middle of the room, I felt that she was surprised. "I'll go pray, of course, sorry, but I got distracted by the work I have to do. You just happened to open the door and I'm getting ready right now." She left me and went back to take care of her business. I gathered myself and went to pray the Friday prayer. After that, I went back into my room and locked it until my mother finished lunch. This is according to the Friday routine we are used to. I sat at my desk and said I would continue the delayed work. From time to time, I would look behind me. My eyes were scanning the room as if searching for that shadow that took shape in strange colors. I felt like I had seen a fleeting scene from a movie that couldn't be replayed. Because what happened to me didn't repeat again until my mother knocked on the door and said lunch was ready. I discovered then that I hadn't accomplished anything in the work I had due to thinking about what happened. I ate lunch and went back to my room. As soon as I locked the door, I felt a terrible headache hitting. And to escape it, I thought of going to sleep. This is the first time I've thought of sleeping at this time, but needs must. I felt that nothing could soothe this headache except for sleep. I closed the laptop and stretched out on the bed. Then I placed my head on the pillow. I looked at the ceiling for a few moments, then closed my eyes. A strange darkness. Narrow streets with unclear features. I kept walking without being able to determine the point I started from, nor the point I was supposed to reach. I felt nothing but my shaky steps and the cold hitting my body from every direction. At the same time, I heard nothing but the sound of my teeth chattering from the cold. I didn't stop in my tracks until I discovered that these narrow streets were graveyard paths. I knew this when I caught a glimpse of a gravestone that appeared before me suddenly. And after it, many stones began to reveal themselves. That wasn't the only thing that was scary. What terrified me more was that I caught sight of someone wearing clothes in the same color scheme that appeared to me. He was standing in front of a grave doing some decorative work. Even though I was puzzled by his presence and his attire, I approached him against my will. I stood beside him and asked, "Since when people do decorations in graves?" He didn't answer my question. It was as if I were talking to a lamppost that doesn't speak, or even a piece of wood that doesn't hear. He kept on with what he was doing. That's when I examined the decoration he was working on. I found an ancient style, consisting of a collection of prayer beads linked together. What shocked me more was that the color of the beads was black like burnt coal, and the spaces between them were antique silver. It also had unclear carvings on it. My throat moved with difficulty as I told him I had seen these prayer beads before. I even have one just like it in my room. I waited for him to comment on what I said, but he remained silent. Then I continued telling him that he also appeared to me in my room, but your features were not clear. Just a human shadow with the same colors you are wearing now. Who are you and what is your story? And what is the story of the prayer beads you are drawing in this decoration? For the first time, he responded to my words by turning towards me. I thought I would see his features and be able to recognize him. But I was surprised that his face was veiled. Veiled in the same color scheme as his clothes. I took a step back. When I saw his eyes appearing from the opening in the veil, they were the same color as the prayer beads. I looked around myself to escape. I discovered that the place had trapped me inside, because I found graves surrounding me on all four sides, and there wasn't a single gap between them that would allow me to escape. When he realized I was trapped with him in this strange place, he finally spoke. But I wish he hadn't spoken, because his voice was very deep and coarse, as if it were coming from a rough, rusty throat. And then he spoke and said,
Zaghloul left his trust behind, and I have come to reclaim it. The true price of the trust hasn't been paid, Ali, nor can it be paid.
His words terrified me, especially his voice, which shook me to my core. Despite all this, I tried to pull myself together. I asked him about the strange things he was saying. What trust and what price? And anyway, is there still someone named Zaghloul? We don't understand a thing from your words, nor can I even understand the strange color combination of your clothes.
Your fault, Ali, is that you lock yourself within a circle of decor and antiques, and you don't know that there is a world wider than the one you live in. And when someone takes something from that world and claims it, the reality is the exact opposite. That's when that world is the one that has taken and claimed him, just as you have done.
I felt like he was speaking to me in riddles. And by nature, I hate it when someone speaks to me this way. That's why I replied and said to him, "What world and what claims are you talking about? And why are your eyes the same color as the prayer beads in the first place?" He laughed in his deep, coarse voice, and I interpreted that as him mocking me. And after he satisfied his urge to laugh, he answered me.
He said to me, the prayer beads you don't like are what brought you here. And they can travel with you even further than this. They can even enter inside you and come back out, and every bead in them holds one of your secrets. These are Zaghloul's beads, Ali, the dervish of the darkness.
When I found him continuing his riddles, my fear vanished. "Maisht," I said to him, annoyed. "Enough with this Zaghloul who's haunted my luck. My whole life I've known Zaghloul to literally mean prayer beads. I don't know how you showed up in my luck too." This time he didn't comment on what I said. He returned to his silence, and his eyes, despite their blackness, began reflecting a light that had no existence. But it was the same light that the beads reflected. His image faded gradually, to the point that what remained of his image turned into smoke the same color as his clothes. And then the smoke entered inside the beads he was drawing in the design on the grave. At that moment I lost my mind and shouted, "Where did you go, Uncle Zaghloul? Why did you leave before telling me your story and the story of the beads? I opened my eyes while asking myself those questions out loud. And it became clear to me that I had seen all this in a dream. Its events were completely linked to the prayer beads I bought. Maybe that was the reason for the shock that made me wake up repeating the same questions aloud. The room door opened, and my mother walked in. She said, "What's wrong, Ali? And who is this Zaghloul you're calling out for?" I made an excuse about the dream and told her, "He's a client with work for me, and I'm late with the delivery, Mom. And I dreamed that he was fighting with me because of this delay." "Then what are those prayer beads you keep asking about?" "Also work, Mom. He wants me to include an old prayer bead design in the decor he requested. This is what happens when you nap at noon. And after eating too, my dear. And you aren't used to that. It had to be. To see dreams that make you hallucinate." She left me and closed the room door. Before I could even get out of bed, I froze in my place, because I heard the remaining beads of the rosary clacking against each other. And when my eyes went toward them, I found them shaking. That's not all. They were reflecting the same gray light that had no source. By the time I closed my eyes and opened them again to process what was happening, I found him in the room. He was in the same form he appeared in during my dream, and in the same colors of his clothes, even the mask covering his face in the same way. His eyes then flashed with the same color of light that came from the beads. And before I could move my tongue to utter a single word, he spoke and said,
"You think you own a new antique, but the truth is the antique owns you. The beads own and are not owned, Ali."
He finished his words and transformed into strands of colored smoke. The beads swallowed him, exactly as it happened in the dream. Only then did my conviction about what was inside these beads shift. Something incomprehensible. A frightening power served by an entity not of our world dwelling inside them. Since this was the first time I thought this way, I didn't want to rush. And I wanted all this to be a hallucination due to overthinking the late work behind me. I decided to wait until Friday. A whole week I have to keep this rosary and endure events that have no explanation. Until I meet Uncle Arafat, the antique dealer, and ask him about the rosary again. Maybe he knows anything about it. I can only say it was a week known only to God. Every passing day proved to me that this rosary is cursed. And the curse within it haunted me in my room and my work through the thing that comes out of it and goes back inside like a wisp of smoke. Even when I was with my friends, it would appear to me. And then it would tell me about things that were going to happen. And sure enough, I'd find they happened a few hours later. Like one time while I was working on a new project, it appeared in my room and said this job would be taken from me. I ignored it and continued my work. Not a few hours later, I found the client calling me, apologizing that he was pulling the job for me and sending it to another interior designer. Another time, I was sitting with my friends at a cafe and it appeared. It told me that the brother of one of my friends would die in an accident. Not 2 or 3 hours passed and my friend received news of his brother's death in a motorcycle accident. And many things like that. All its news was catastrophic and came true. The scariest part was that no one could see or hear it but me. It was the slowest week I've ever had. I couldn't believe it was finally Friday, and I heard Uncle Arafat's voice right on schedule. I grabbed the rosary and put it back in its old velvet box. When I went down to him, he spoke up, saying it's the first time you come down without looking from the balcony. I didn't say much and asked him directly, "Do you know anything about this rosary, Uncle Arafat?" "All I know is what you bought from me, honestly." "Anyway, what do you want to know about it for?" "In short, Uncle Arafat, my life has been turned upside down since I got this rosary. So if you know anything about it, please tell me. You know I've never deceived you, but honestly, I don't know anything about it, except that I got it from the owners of an old house, and you bought it. Can you remember where that house is and who its owners are?" I kept pushing him until he answered me. After I got the address of the house and knew its owners, I told him I'd head out at the end of the day to follow up on the work myself at one of my sites. And indeed, by the end of the day, I reached the house. I found an old one-story house, surrounded by barriers because it was about to be demolished. When I asked about its owners, I found out they were living nearby until the house is demolished and rebuilt. When I reached them and spoke with them, they told me they bought the house a long time ago from a blind dervish named Sheikh Zaghloul, and the house remained closed for a long time. During that time, Sheikh Zaghloul died. When they decided to live in it, their lives were turned upside down. They started seeing the apparition of Sheikh Zaghloul in his colorful clothes inside the house, with a rosary in his hand emitting gray smoke. When they asked about this, a good man advised them to tear down the house and rebuild it, because this entity is tied to the smell of the house and the incense that Sheikh Zaghloul used to burn day and night in this place. What I learned from the house owners was, I couldn't get any extra information out of them. So I gathered my things and went back to the old house. I stood in front of the house, and inside the velvet box, I felt movement, as if I had a snake trapped inside it, not prayer beads. I gripped it with all my might so it wouldn't open. I stayed like that until an old man leaning on a cane came up next to me. He asked me then, "Do you need something, son?" When I looked his way, I saw his eyes were fixed on the box. I felt he knew what was inside. That's what made me ask him, "Are you from the neighborhood, sir?" "I've been a neighbor to this house you're standing in front of for 60 years. I seized the opportunity and asked, "So you knew Sheikh Zaghloul?" He replied with distaste and said, "Don't call him Sheikh Zaghloul, a Dark Dervish. He offered a part of his blood as a sacrifice to the devil, in exchange for granting him the power to control people. And the result was that after the devil took his blood, he told him to go to a certain place in the cemetery. There he found a black mass the size of a palm. He took it and carved the beads of his cursed prayer beads from it. After that, the devil pointed him to a place where he got silver beads engraved with talismanic letters. And then he was ordered to make the prayer beads. When he fulfilled the devil's demands, the pact was sealed, and his sight was taken away. In return, the devil granted the prayer beads a cursed power. He specifically chose these prayer beads so Zaghloul could deceive people and gain more followers. Consequently, they would become followers of the devil indirectly because people are naturally innocent and will trust anyone holding prayer beads, and they would call him a holy dervish and a man of God. But the frightening truth is that the dervish is a dark dervish and a servant of Iblis. Ever since then, son, he chose colorful clothes to draw attention, and he began to wander the shrines and cemeteries with the beads and profit through them from people's delusions. Because the curse in the beads began to reveal their secrets to him, and they thought he was blessed, and no one could see that he was cursed and carrying a curse, walking among them. Over time, his skin turned the color of the beads. And after he deceived people for many years, they found him dead in his house. They didn't discover his death until he went missing for a day and the smell came out. Then his heirs, who had cut ties with him because he chose to be a dervish, sold the house and everything in it. The people who bought the house kept it locked for many years, along with everything inside. And when they lived in it, their situation turned upside down. They used to say they saw Zaghloul's spirit. They didn't know that what was appearing to them was a manifestation of the curse in the beads before they got rid of it. And now, they are tearing it down to rebuild it, as you can see, because someone advised them to do so. He was telling this story, and my eyes kept drifting from time to time toward the box in my hands. And after I realized that I had bought a curse, not an antique as I'm used to, I told him back then, it's my luck that I am into antiques. And his prayer beads, when they were sold, became my share. I was going to open the box, but he stopped me. He told me not to open it and give the curse permission to come out again. Get rid of the box. When I talked to Sheikh Wassel, he told me the story of Zaghloul and his prayer beads. But the people who bought the house lived in it. They thought his spirit appeared because he was blessed. And the people in the area believed this idea, and they remained deceived by him just as he deceived them when he was alive. The original story remained a secret between the Sheikh and me, and that was to avoid trouble. Even after Zaghloul died, we couldn't enter the house while it was locked, because that in itself was a problem. No other people would have turned against us, because they were obsessed with the satanic dervish acts he used to do, until the owners of the house decided to demolish it. They removed everything. At the time, I thought the story of the prayer beads was over. I didn't know they would circle back, and return to where they started. But this sheikh advised me that if I ever found the beads one day, I should bury them in the same soil their owner was buried in. He is more deserving of the curse he summoned. Salvation was in his final words. I didn't delay in carrying out the advice. And because he was his neighbor long ago and knew his grave, he took me to the cemetery. At that time, night was about to fall. Despite that, we went to the grave. The grave I was surprised to find was a replica of the one I saw in my dream, and I saw Zaghloul, the owner of the beads, in front of it. It was as if he appeared to me and described the beads as a trust, so I would strive to return them to him with a curse inside. This was after the beads dazzled my eyes, so I would possess them. And it was as if the curse inside was looking for another Dark Dervish to continue the path. But the curse chose the wrong person this time. That is why it turned around and returned to its original owner's grave, because I cannot take his place. I dug next to the grave wall, placed the box with the beads inside, and covered it. Since then, everything that was happening to me disappeared. I no longer see the blend of colors, which turned out to be the clothes of a Dark Dervish who sold himself to the devil. Nor does he appear to me again, neither in my room nor anywhere else. Even my work stabilized more after these beads were buried and my connection to them was severed. After what happened, I still continued buying antiques from Arafat, but I became very careful to ask him about any piece that caught my eye, meaning where he bought it from and how it reached him, because I was never ready to live the experience of the beads again. Because it is very possible it could be carrying a curse through any other antique piece. And with that, today's episode concludes, as well as today's story and experience. You have the right, my friend, to believe or disbelieve all or part of the episode. For these are the listener's experiences, your own stories. I thank the writer Muhammad Abdel Rahman Shahat for writing the episode in the radio format you just heard. I also thank the writer Zaghloul for preparing all episodes of the General Horror program. Finally, I thank Mustafa El-Mazri for the sound effects and music, and I thank you all for listening. Whoa! If you are new to the channel, please don't forget to subscribe, join the channel, and turn on the notification bell to receive all updates. But if you are one of those who like to support me, please don't forget to like, comment, and share. Thank you very much. You have been with Muhammad Gawali and the General Horror program. Peace be upon you.